to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have two proclamations that I'd like to read into the record. I'm going to do them out of order at the Chief's request. We have a group of co-responders with us this evening. Welcome. We're glad you're here. We're very happy to make this proclamation, and I will read it for you. This is National Co-Responder Crisis and Co-Responder and Crisis Responder Week. Whereas Johnson County, Kansas has continued to address the rising demand for mental health and substance use services, and whereas mental health and substance use challenges can lead to homelessness, incarceration, and emergency room visits, which are more intrusive and costly for communities than earlier interventions and connections to behavioral health services. And whereas Johnson County, Kansas has recognized the need for additional resources for individuals experiencing mental health crises and identified co-responders and mobile crisis teams as an emerging effective practice. And whereas Johnson County Mental Health Center's co-responder program was established in 2011 to embed mental health clinicians with law enforcement agencies to respond collaboratively to individuals in crisis, provide the right intervention at the right time to avoid arrests, emergency room visits, and repeat 911 calls by connecting to appropriate resources. And whereas Johnson County Mental Health Center's mobile crisis response team includes mental health clinicians and crisis case managers that provide screenings, assessments, and connections to appropriate to resources like counseling, medication, housing, and other basic necessities, further reducing the need for unnecessary first responder interactions and hospitalizations. And whereas today the co-responder program has 2.5 co-responder positions and 15 partnerships with local law enforcement agencies, and the Mobile Crisis Response Team has 10 positions, including 3 new positions approved by the Board of County Commissioners last month. And now, therefore, in recognition of their service to our community, I, Melanie Hepperly, Mayor of the City of Fairway, do hereby proclaim the week of September 15th as National Co-Responder and Crisis Responder Week in the City of Fairway, Kansas, dated this 9th day of September, 2024. All right, the second proclamation is for National Suicide Prevention Week. Oh, wait a minute. Chief? They've got the wrong one. That wouldn't do. Thank you. Oh, I almost hit you in the head. I'm sorry. That's all right. Thank you, Dan. Well, not only is our system falling apart, but so is the mayor. Okay, September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Whereas the month of September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month and is intended to help promote awareness surrounding each of the suicide prevention resources available to us and our community. The simple goal is to learn how to help those around us and how to talk about suicide without increasing the risk of harm. And whereas suicidal thoughts can affect everyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background, and whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 10 to 34. And whereas Fairway, Kansas is no different than any other community in the country, but chooses to publicly state and place our full support behind local educators, mental health professionals, athletic coaches, PAC leaders, police officers, and parents as partners in supporting our community in simply being available to one another. And whereas local organizations like the Johnson County Suicide Prevention Coalition and national organizations like the National Alliance on Mental Illness are on the front lines of a battle that many still refuse to discuss in public, as suicide and mental illness remain too taboo to a topic to speak on. And whereas every member of our community should understand that throughout life struggles, we all need the occasional reminder that we are all silently fighting our own battles. And whereas I encourage all residents to take the time to inquire as to the well-being of their family, friends, and neighbors over the next few days and to genuinely convey their appreciation for their existence by any gesture they deem appropriate. A simple phone call, message, handshake, or a hug can go a long way towards helping someone realize that suicide is not the answer. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Melanie Hepperly, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2024 as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in the city of Fairway, dated this 9th day of September 2024. All right, next on the agenda is the monthly report of each of the standing committees. Consolidated Fire District Number 2, they report to us quarterly now, and the chief is not here this evening. So we will go on to admin and finance. Nathan?
Thank you, Mayor. The Administration and Finance Committee met on August 28th. The packet includes the number of discussion items that were covered during the meeting. I will just highlight the last one regarding the Shawnee Mission Parkway Tunnel. We have received the estimates for that. The cost to restore the tunnel is going to be about $125,000. So we have put in with some contingency a placeholder in the capital improvement program of about $150,000 for summer of 2025. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions for the administration part.
Any questions? Jenna?
Jenna Borofsky, Ward 4. Nathan, I know there's a lot on your plate. Any update on talking to the HOAs about the restrictive covenant language?
I reached back out to the HOAs to summarize the discussion for the Administration and Finance Committee. I have worked with the president for Fieldston on their language and the process that they're going on, but I've also now connected her with the appropriate county personnel on that matter.
Thank you. Great.
Anyone else? David, go ahead.
How many places are we supposed to?
Just one. There's two. You've got the claims and then the budget document. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Does Joe have a question? Joe is attending via Zoom this evening. He's good? Okay. And finance?
The finance report is attached. You can see at the meeting, most of our topics were focused on the administrative side. Just note that for the month of August, which would be June's sales tax collection, the revenue was 222,000 and change, which is above budget of 194. So sales tax we're teetering back and forth with the numbers from last year. Some months were a little bit above, more months than that were a little bit below what was collected in 2023. But it's not significant.
Okay. Any questions for Nathan on the financial report? And I'll trust Joe doesn't unless you tell me. Okay? All right, police, chief?
Thank you. I'm just going to summarize some of the incidents that have happened over the last month, most of which are alarming is the amount of people running from us. It just continues to go up. People are not stopping for the police. One individual did stop, and he decided that he wanted to resist officers. He was taken into custody. Drugs were located within that individual's possession. There was an aggravated burglary in Prairie Village, meaning people were home when the residence was burglarized. Those people fled in a vehicle. We pursued that car. It ended up going through our city, and the suspect was later taken into custody after that incident. There was a recovered stolen also that was located in the Indian Mission parking lot. We saw the individual on camera after it was called in, dropped the car, and then left, probably getting into another vehicle nearby. And that was during the day, which is a little bit unusual, especially to pull up in the Indian Mission. And then another alarming thing, and I don't mean to, obviously I always seem like I tell you guys all this, but that's my job, is during the day today there was a road rage incident where an individual pulled a handgun on another individual. It happened at Shawnee Mission Parkway and Mission Road eastbound. That suspect has been identified, and we're working that case right now. That is all I have in reference to my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the chief?
I have a question.
Jerry, go ahead.
Well, not a question, a comment. Thank you, actually. The police chief spent a couple of hours with us at Old Mission Church last week. We're upgrading our security system and interviewed several vendors, and our police chief has several great questions to help us decide. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Public Works, we'll let Bill's report stand as written. If you have any questions, please reach out to him. He'll be happy to answer them for you. And Parks and Rec, Bryce?
Thanks, Mayor. Let my report stand as submitted here. Just want to make a note that we do have on the 21st, we have our Touch a Truck and our outdoor movie all on the same day. We're going to play Little Giants, as I've said before. And also, we do have a Park and Rec Committee meeting on the 25th before the Admin Finance Committee meeting. Just FYI for those of you who are on the committee.
September 25th?
25th, that Wednesday, yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Bryce? All right. Moving on to the monthly reports of special committees. Nathan, is there anything for the tree board?
No report.
Next on the agenda is a public comment for the consent agenda items only. I will read those into the record. Item A, approved minutes of the previous regular city council meeting. Item B, approved claims and appropriations. Ordinance number 1812, August 2024. C, approve proposal from, is it Duty? I like that. Duty calls for pet waste station installation and service proposal. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on any of those items? No, seeing none. Nathan? Anyone? Okay. All right, these items are determined to be routine enough to be acted on in a single motion. However, this does not preclude discussion. If a council member requests, an item may be removed from the consent agenda for further consideration and separate motion. Does anyone wish to remove an item, or are there any questions on the consent agenda? All right, is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda items A through C.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve all items on the consent agenda, A through C. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Moving on to new business. Item A, public hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate and 2025 budget hearing. I hereby open that public hearing. Nathan, do you have any comments before I open it? Okay.
Do you want to, should we do the presentation first?
Yeah, why don't we?
Okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think that'll go a little bit more smoothly if we do that.
So as I mentioned earlier, our audio-visual system is not working, but there were copies of the presentation that I'm going to go through that were out on the podium in the hallway. So I will just kind of speak through this. It's fairly brief, and then we can go for questions from there. Some highlights for the draft of the 2025 budget include a flat mill levy rate. This will be for the 9th consecutive year. Each year, there is some adjustments that the county does based on the outcomes of some of the appeals. So our actual mill levy rate for 2024 was about 19.974. So we've gone back to what was budgeted for 2024, and we're using that same mill levy for 2025. The general fund excluding reserves increased 8.49% for the 2025 budget to just over $7 million. Again, that excludes our reserve funds. Total unrestricted reserve funds will be just over $1.1 million and is split between the general fund reserve and the equipment fund reserve, which is an unbudgeted fund. Health insurance has not increased for the last 2 consecutive years. However, a mid-year increase is expected to range from 6 to 8% among the varied plans offered by the city in 2025. Budget transfers from the general fund include $70,000 to the equipment reserve, and this is an increase. Normally, we budget 10 into the equipment reserve fund. However, with the public safety sales tax number 4, which was for the courthouse reconstruction, that sales tax will end in 2027. So for 2025 and 2026, for 2025, we budgeted $60,000 of that, which is approximately half of what we received from that sales tax. We've budgeted that as a transfer just so that it doesn't get lost in general fund revenues. And then when we do the 2026 budget, I'll budget the full $120,000 that we receive in revenue from the sales tax to be a transfer. That way, again, we don't lose that in operational dollars when we get to 2027. We will transfer just under $790,000 from the general fund into the capital improvement program. This is the second largest budgeted transfer into the CIPs, into the CIP fund behind this year, which was a $1.1 million budgeted transfer. We will also transfer just under $70,000 into the Shawnee Indian Mission Fund to help cover operating costs for the mission. The police department budget includes funding for new computers and mobile data terminals for the patrol vehicles, along with the second of 3 annual payments for the new body camera and in-car video systems that we installed in 2023. The Public Works Department includes funding for surveying half of the city's cul-de-sacs. We are currently surveying the first half in 2024. We'll survey the second half in 2025, which will allow us to have a better idea of where the rights-of-way are located on the cul-de-sacs, because right now we're just using our best estimates. And then just like the PD, the Public Works Department will be getting new desktop and laptop computers as well. The Parks and Recreation budget includes funding for replacing the second half of the pool furniture, which we did in 2023, the first half. We will also be purchasing new gym mats for the City Hall multipurpose room on the other side of the partition, as well as park patron counters to gain an idea of a better picture of the traffic we're getting through our city parks. The administration budget includes funds for a crossing guard. This was added toward the end of the budget process based on a request from Mission. So we are splitting a crossing guard position with the City of Mission for the Highlands Elementary crossing on Row at 62nd Street. We will also be installing pet waste stations, which you just approved the agreement this evening for that. They will be installed throughout the city and serviced once a week. Painting of the public areas for City Hall, which include the hallway, City Council chambers, and the multipurpose room will all receive a fresh coat of paint in 2025. And then lastly, the Government Relations Consulting Services Agreement we have with Federico and Durst is added to the 2025 budget. In June of 2024, the Administration and Finance Committee reviewed salary data from across the Kansas City metro area. The committee determined Fairway staff salaries should generally fall between the 60th and 70th percentile of the market rate. Several market adjustments were implemented in July, and those market adjustments are reflected in the 2025 budget, along with a 5% merit pool that will be implemented at the first part of 2025 to make sure that we are not falling behind on the salaries in the metro area. This is just a snapshot of what the budget looks like from 2023 to 2024, and you can see the difference there. The revenue will go up just under 7%. That is due in part to additional fees for service, as well as the capturing the increased valuation from the Johnson County Appraisal Office. And you can see there by department the impacts of the budget to arrive at that 8.49%. Again, these numbers do not include reserves. The total general obligation bond debt service in 2025 will be $842,000. In the budget document itself, for those of you who have copies of it, I know there were copies out front. If you look on the back pages of the budget, you will see a box on some of those pages that is an example of all of our debt service. So that's copied on the debt, debt service fund, the 2014 sales tax fund, the stormwater utility fund. All of those pages in the back of the budget document show the debt chart of what bonds are being paid and from what accounts they're being paid from. All of our other funds are balanced. The stormwater utility fund, which was increased for the 2024 year, continues to cover bond payments from stormwater work that has happened in the past, and it will now start to pay for stormwater projects going forward in terms of being able to pay cash for those projects as well. The tree fund is used, the revenue from that fund comes from violations to the public tree protection ordinance or from approved removals from trees from the right-of-way. And those dollars are used to cover the annual cost of the city's tree trimming program, which is to trim a third of the city's right-of-way trees each year. The Shawnee Indian Mission Fund, again, is balanced. It uses the funds in that account are used to pay for the operational expenses of the Shawnee Indian Mission. The 2014 sales tax fund was a 2014 sales tax that was approved by voters to cover the swimming pool renovations as well as the acquisition and renovation of the Public Works facility. Ongoing, that pays for park and recreation capital projects. Next year is slated for the pavilion and turf on the grass area of the pool. And this year, if we can still work it into the calendar, will be to implement a new landscaping plan for Peterson Park. The Equipment Reserve Fund, as I said, we've been transferring about $10,000 into that fund every year for equipment purchases in the future. We've also parked money there. For example, the initial intent for the new in-car videos and body cams for the police department was for the PD to park money in the Equipment Reserve Fund over a period of 3 years. and then pay cash at the time. However, we were able to enter into a lease agreement with the equipment and the vendor so that we could get our hands on the equipment right away, and then just use what we were going to be transferring into the Equipment Reserve Fund to actually pay for the lease payments on that, on those cameras. The Capital Improvement Fund for 2025 through 2029 is our, I'm sorry, that should be a 2025 on that second line there. Street maintenance, cars projects, replacement vehicles and equipment, and next year, a new roof for City Hall. This is just a snapshot of how we compare with some of the other cities in Kansas. We're the 4th lowest city mill levy for cities of the second class, and 6th lowest for cities of the first and second class, which is defined by population. We are the 3rd lowest overall mill levy rate for cities of the second class in the state of Kansas, and 6th lowest mill levy rate for all classes with a population over 1,000. So that just tells you where our mill levy is and compared to others. And then this last picture is a breakdown of your tax bill. It's always important to remember that Fairway represents only 17% of your property tax bill that you receive from the county. The largest consumer of property tax is the school district at about 43%. So that completes the presentation. I know I kind of went through that quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions or hear any feedback.
Sorry. Council, I know we've looked at this budget since, when did we start this? March and April. So we've reviewed numerous versions, and it's probably ingrained in your head by now, but is there any additional comments or discussion that you would like to have during our public hearing? Any questions for Nathan before we vote on this budget? Now would be the time. Lee? Yeah.
Lee Story. I just want to say this is the first budget process that I have been through, and I just want to applaud and appreciate the zero-based process that the mayor and the city administrator have implemented and that we collectively have been going through for the last many, many months. It truly gives us an opportunity to have a window into and to pressure test every single dollar from every department that was spent in the previous year and how that's going to be impacted in the upcoming year. I think we've done a very good job of trying to squeeze out any excess spending. Of course, costs tend to go up, not down, and I think we can all appreciate that, wish it weren't so. But I believe that collectively we've done a really nice job of trying to keep a lid on spending and continue to deliver the excellent services that Fairway is known for and that our residents demand. So kudos to the process. It's been a good one.
Thank you, Lee. I really appreciate those comments, and I think this process is a very, very solid one, because to begin each new year at a zero-based, where we analyze each service that the city provides, and we consider 3 things. Do we want to leave the service the same? Are there things we're doing in that service that residents no longer desire, or we can find a more efficient way to do them? And then the third is, should we enhance that service? Are there items that residents want in each of these additional items? And we do that for each service and each department that we provide for the city. So it truly is built from the ground up each year. It's a very tedious is the only word I know how to use to describe it. And staff does a wonderful job in putting all this information together. They then present it to each of the committees, and various council members are assigned to various committees, and we review each of the individual decision packages for each service that we provide. So that is the time that the committee chooses which of those 3 Are we going to leave it the same? Are we going to change the service and decrease the service because it's no longer needed, no longer wanted? Or are we going to enhance the service? Then the committee makes a recommendation. The department heads put that together and bring it to the admin and finance committee meeting, and we go through the process all over again as a group. So this budget is reviewed numerous times. And Nathan, I don't know how to thank you for the work that you do all through this process since March until September, because I know you review it and you review it and you review it, and it changes. The council is apprised of each of those changes as new information comes to light, and I think staff and the department heads do a super job. So thank you to all three of you, and to Bill, if you'll pass that along, Nathan, to him, I would appreciate it. Any other? Yes, Jenna?
Jenna Brofsky, Ward 4. Nathan, at the beginning, you mentioned that the mill levy remains the same. I think there was some confusion among residents about that. Can you just repeat what you said at the beginning?
Sure.
Yeah.
So for the 2024 budget year, we had a mill levy rate of 19.930. And that mill levy will change a couple of points each year as the county concludes the
But
appraisal.
it's not a full point.
No, it's like
It-
a hundredth of a point.
Point zero.
Point zero zero two or
two.
point zero two.
Yes, we're not
So-
talking about a full mill.
Yeah, so as an example, when the county then sets the final mill rate, it's based off the dollar amount of property taxes that we have built into our budget. So they will make some minor adjustments based on what those appeals were. So we had budgeted for 2024 9.930. By the time the county got done adjusting the number, it was 19.974, I think. So when we started the budget process for 2025, we worked with the mill levy rate at 19.930, which was the budget amount for 2024. So we set the mill levy flat, but the county will adjust it based on the result of appeals and ensuring that the dollar amount of property taxes we've said need to be levied is met. So that'll get reset every year.
And mill levy rate is the same as a tax rate.
Yeah.
It's just, the city language is the mill levy rate, and that means the tax rate. So we have left the tax rate flat for how many years now?
This is the ninth.
The ninth year?
Again, barring those little adjustments from
Right.
the county.
Yes.
And if you look on page 16 of the budget document, it'll walk you through with how your property taxes are calculated based on the value of your home. So you can, if you know the value of your home, you can go through and calculate exactly what your city portion of property taxes are. And again, it's about 17% of your total tax bill.
For those of you in the audience, were there copies out at the front?
Yep.
Okay. Page 16 is a good one to look at, and the other page, because I know this is a packet full of a lot of numbers, where's the, oh, it's on the last page.
Yeah.
It's out there, it's out front. There's two things. Nathan will get it, bring it in. So look at page, what'd you say, 15? 16. Look at page 16, and then also the last page of the thicker packet that Nathan just gave you. Those two are very concise and show you exactly how the calculation is done. Now, what happens is the tax rate, mill levy, stays the same, but the valuation of your property goes up. The city can't control that. So that and it's primarily the value of the land, but it's also the value of the homes. And so that's how the increase happens. Nathan, you wouldn't add anything to that? Okay. All right, any other questions? Jerry, did you have one?
Jerry Williams, Ward 2, just to add to applaud the budgeting process. I would like to highlight that we included the salary adjustments for our employees. City employees, we have the best employees around, and it's not just a retention thing. We want our employees to feel happy to be here. So I applaud the budget process, and I'm happy that we were able to include that, and for the robust council discussion and getting to those percentages.
Thank you, Jerry. Very important point. Anyone else? Joe, do you have any comments?
I could only double down what everybody else is saying, but sort of on the light side, I think we should thank Microsoft Excel for the ability to manipulate and accumulate and adjust all those numbers that Nathan has to deal with. We're talking about thousands and thousands of numbers that have to be related and added and collated. And I don't know how he would do it without that tool. But as you can see, he did a great job.
And then there's the filing to the state, which I know is your favorite document to do. Thank you, Joe, for those comments. Anyone else? Okay. I'm considering items A, B, and C all together. Usually I'll ask for public comment after each lettered item. But since these are all related, I'm including them together before I open it for public comment. I would like to read into the record the resolution 2024D, a resolution of the City of Fairway, Kansas to levy a property tax rate exceeding the revenue neutral rate. Whereas the revenue neutral rate for the City of Fairway was calculated as 18.646 mils by the Johnson County Clerk, and whereas the budget proposed by the governing body of the City of Fairway will require the levy of a property tax rate exceeding the revenue neutral rate, and whereas the governing body held a hearing on September 9th, 2024, allowing all interested taxpayers desiring to be heard an opportunity to give oral testimony. And whereas the governing body of the City of Fairway, having heard testimony, still finds it necessary to exceed the revenue neutral rate. Now therefore be it resolved by the governing body of the City of Fairway, the City of Fairway shall levy a property tax rate exceeding the revenue neutral rate of 18.646 mils. This resolution shall take effect and be enforced immediately upon its adoption and shall remain in effect until further action is taken by the governing body. That's the resolution that we will be voting upon in considering this budget. I'd like to take a few minutes to explain where the revenue neutral rate exercise came to be. I don't know of a better word. This was passed by the state legislature 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, requiring that the cities go through this process, and the revenue neutral rate means that our revenues would stay the same in 2025 as they were in 2024 if we stay at that revenue neutral rate. In other words, we would not increase the budget approximately 8%, which is what we've done for costs. Your questions will be allowed during public comment, sir.
I just trying to have him explain what you're saying.
No, sir.
Okay.
You'll have your opportunity during public comment. I think that is often misunderstood, is why I took the few moments to describe that. Are there any questions about that, or Nathan, do you want to add something?
I would just add that in terms of the revenue neutral rate, it's only focused on property tax revenue. So the other revenues that the city brings in through parks and recreation fees or franchise fees, those are not part of the revenue neutral rate process. It is specifically to cap the amount of property tax dollars received, revenue received, to the same level as the previous year. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're just talking about the actual property tax rate.
Good point. Any questions about the resolution? Okay, any further discussion before I open for public comment? Nathan, anything else you want to add? All right, I will now open new business concerning the 2025 budget and the revenue neutral rate resolution for public comment. Sir, if you'd like to come forward, please state your name and address for the record and turn on the mic.
I'm Jim Hafner. You need my address?
Yes, please.
6242 Glenfield Drive. You know it, anyways. So on this thing from the county, I'm not quite sure. So what does this all mean now? How much more are you going to want from me on the taxes compared to this?
But it's all based on what your,
Question one.
it's all based on your individual property values. So you can, if you have your, and I've not seen the Fairway letter. So does it give you the actual dollar amount of increase, or is it?
Well, it goes from, okay, the revenue neutral is 1305. The maximum tax is 1395. So is that the
Okay,
highest you're going to
So
go?
the 1395 then would be the, keeping the mill levy flat at the 19.930.
And you're going to do that or not do that?
That's what is being proposed tonight, yes.
Okay.
Is to.
When I was at the commission meeting, they were saying, though, that the thing on the end said that could either be above or below that,
So
the county.
once
So
we
are you going with the county or not going with the county?
It'll depend on, I mean, so we as a city, when we published the notification for this hearing, we set our maximum mill levy rate at 19.930.
Okay.
So the city cannot increase, we couldn't decide tonight that we wanted to raise it to 22. We've already said that we're not going to go any higher than 19.930. Now, that said, that's the rate that we have published and that's what we're budgeting for. But if the county has to make adjustments based on appeals and how it comes in, that's where you could see it adjusted by a tenth or a hundredth of a point or so to get to the same dollar amount that the revenue is going to bring in. But that's, the city won't make those calculations, that's done by the county. And again, it could be a couple of ticks up or a couple of ticks down based on the appeals.
Okay. 2 comments. Your comment about the tunnel, I heard it was only going to be 80 grand. Now you're saying 100. What are you going to do to the thing? I mean, I'm kind of curious.
So it is a very
I'll do
extensive.
it for 50 grand.
Extensive process. It'll be about close to a months-long construction project where they'll have to do a substantial sandblasting and then reconstruction from the inside of the tunnel, as well as basically replacing the ramp walls on the north side. So it's a very extensive project, and the $85,000 mark was a budget number that we had. We had acquired that in May of 2022.
Yeah.
So there was, but the work was not as extensive as what is now needing to be done.
And you got somebody pegged to do that?
We've received the quote from a contractor to do the work.
Okay. Second comment, I'm in the ward where things are changing, the housing structures are changing dramatically. So have you seen what the difference is then between one year versus the other? So when you tear down the $500,000 house and build the $2.2 million house, how does that impact the income coming into the city?
So in terms of the appraisal process, the mayor and I sat through a meeting a couple of years ago where the county was clear that that is not their intent to allow a tear down and rebuild to have a substantial impact on an existing structure's property value. Now, on your tax bill, or on your appraisal bill, you might see an address of a new build, but it's simply because it was a sold property. And so that's where the comparisons are coming from, not necessarily based on the value of the house. So the city would see, if you had a $500,000 house and it was torn down and a $1.5 million house is built on that, same lot, there would be an incremental increase in the property taxes we would receive because of the increase in value of the new structure. But it's not a one-for-one. I want to be clear on that. Sometimes these new homes are being built, and it might cost $2.5 million to build. But in terms of the appraisal is not looking at the finishes or the amenities that are in the house. They're looking at square footage. So it might be 2.5 million with all the bells and whistles, but the county's only going to appraise it at 1.5.
Yeah, I know that.
So, and that then is, so we're not capturing in that total increase in property value in terms of the amount of money spent on that property. We would be capturing the increase in what the county says this new appraised value would be.
But then the next year, doesn't the county catch up with that? Do I have to rat out that
Typically not.
This house is worth more
So-
than what the county's saying it is?
So generally speaking, the county is going to run between 10 and 20% below what the market value is. And statutorily, they're required to be within 20% of the market, up or down. So if you look at your property tax bills or your appraisal that you get from the county, generally speaking, most homes are going to be able to sell about 10% above what that appraisal is coming from the county.
Okay. And so more people need to appeal those things if they're too high.
Everyone is welcome to appeal if they'd like, yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else like to speak?
John Hale, 6018 Catalina. If I understand, and the question I was going to ask is, I want to make sure I understood what you were talking about. Oh, it's not on? Okay, I'm sorry.
Now, state your name and address.
I got a big mouth and it generally
Well,
carries.
state your name and address again for the
Okay,
record.
John Hale, 6018 Catalina. If I understand, I mean, the question I was going to ask when you were talking about the revenue neutral goes back to the question he just posed to a certain extent. If a house is built next door where the increase in the value that the county assesses it is, say, $1 million more than what it was there before, that extra $1 million is put into the assessed valuation, which raises the assessed valuation, and the 19.93 revenue neutral is, goes after the increased amount of what the county is going to get. Is that correct? I mean, when you figure the revenue neutral, you're figuring on the total valuation of all houses in Fairway, right?
Residential and commercial, correct.
Okay. So what he was, if the house next door to whomever is built, and that goes up $1 million, that's the city's valuation that goes up $1 million.
Yes,
Right?
part of it, yeah.
Right, so the 18.3 is, or whatever that number is figured on the new valuation
So,
of the city housing, of the assessments in the city. If the assessments in the city was $10 million and now it's $11 million, you used to take the 18 neutral, the 18 point whatever it was, on the old number, now you're going to take 18 point on the new number,
Hey,
the
Nathan.
higher number,
Nathan, can I
right?
sure.
try? So I think I understood your question a little differently than Nathan answered, and I think that's
Okay.
what you're getting on. So let's say every single house in Fairway stayed the exact same valuation as the previous year, except one house was torn down and rebuilt, and there was an extra $1 million of valuation.
Right.
So we would still have to go through the revenue neutral rate process because we were recognizing the extra valuation of that one house.
Right, so the revenue neutral is based on actual year over year.
Yes.
Okay. Even if it goes up, it's revenue neutral basis goes on how much money you get.
And if you look at, for both of you, if you look at page 15 of the longer document,
I'm listening.
that's the summary of how entire assessed value of Fairway real property has changed every year for the last
Right, well-
10 years.
Right, and just
so-
like, as I was saying earlier, before the entire council was here, between 2022 tax that you received and 2023 that you received an extra $441,000.
Well, what we receive is based on if the tax rate stays the same, which is what is being proposed.
I'm telling you what the county told me you got.
Where,
You- Huh?
where does your 400,000 come from?
It came from these numbers that's sent to me by the county on which I pay my tax bill.
Okay,
This
but
is after any adjustments made by the county,
just the Fairway number?
just the Fairway number. I can show you I can show you one of these as an example if you'd like.
I would like to see it.
Mayor, going back to the shorter summary, the general fund revenue shows a difference of $462,000.
Oh, okay.
City of Fairway, here's your mill rate, and it comes out to $200,000 that you got more than you had the year before.
Oh, the change.
Yeah.
It-
An additional $241,000
Yeah,
the city
I
received.
thought you said 400,000.
2 years. This year, well, it's not on here. I'll get you the other, I'll see the other 200,000
That went up the next year?
from the previous year.
So,
Oh,
I'm sorry,
I see what you're
so
saying.
what's the point of your comment? I'm trying to understand the point of your comment.
Please
Can you go to-
please go back to, please go back
Can
to
you
the
go back to the?
microphone?
Yeah.
We've given you almost $450,000 over those 2 years. Is my point.
Well, the residents haven't given us anything, sir. We collect, the county collects the taxes for us,
And they gave it to you.
correct, and they
That's
collect,
that's $441,000 more money than you had.
and they collect, well, every year we collect more tax than the year before because every year, thankfully, the value of property in Fairway goes up.
Right.
And because
And
the-
it's the same way with the county every year, and the county you have increased every year while it was minimal, six of the last 7 years, and the county over that same period has gone down, is my point.
Well, the county budget has actually gone up considerably over the
I don't,
last 6
the
years.
budget is one thing.
The county expenditures
The
have gone
mill,
up
the mill
considerably.
levy is what I'm talking about.
So that's the whole concept of the revenue neutral rate. If we stayed at the same revenues as last year, our mill levy would go down considerably. And then we would be having the discussion of which services would you like to cut? So
That's
would you like to,
correct.
would you
Yeah,
like to,
it's
sir,
based
would
on
you,
want
would you
or
like to
need.
cut the police department? Would you like to cut public works? Do you not want your streets plowed in the winter? Do you not want police officers patrolling your neighborhood? So
There's other
we,
ways to
we
cut.
talk about this every year in the budget process, and I appreciate your being here, but our costs don't stay the same. Your costs
Understood.
go up, the city's costs go up, and with our zero budgeting, every line item is looked at. What are we going to cut? Are we going to cut anything so we can reduce the mill levy? And
That's a-
unfortunately, we haven't found anything that we could seriously cut.
The difference between the city and me is I have to cut my expenditures because I don't have the opportunity to raise my revenue. My revenue is on a fixed basis at my age. Okay? The county doesn't, I mean, the city of the county and other governmental bodies don't have the same restrictions I do. Because if you want to spend more money for whatever reason, you can just tax us more. I can't force the government to give me more money in Social Security or other things. I have to, every time I'm making an expenditure, I have to determine, is that an expenditure based on something I want, or is that based on something I need? And that's the way you have to look at expenses. I don't know if I don't know. Nathan, have you done any sort of
And sir, just
comparison?
so that's what we do in our budget process. What do we need to fund as a city? And we generally don't fund, I don't know that we fund any wants.
Don't you want, the doggy thing
we-
is not a want? I don't see where you need that.
Okay,
But that's, now, okay, getting off. My question to Nathan is, have anybody in the budgeting process done any analysis of when the money is spent?
Well, we get monthly financials of all of our expenditures.
Have you done some comparisons? I mean, knowing people, relatives who have worked in the government, the fourth quarter, the managers come around and say, we need to spend more money, so we get the same money next year.
Not in the city of Fairway.
So-
That's what I stopped in 2009 when I came on the council. As a finance person, the first thing I did, said, where did the reserves go? And that's because the budgets were built on the prior year's budget. And starting in 2010, we no longer do that. We use, that's what I was talking about with the zero-based budgeting. We no longer look at the prior year's budget. We base it on what it costs to run the city. And if the costs go down, then the budget will go down. But our costs are not going down.
Mayor, if I could just add to that, when you look at the fourth quarter expense reports for the city, all of our department heads know that the more money they spend out of the general fund budget means less money gets transferred to the capital improvement budget, which means the more money we spend every year on operational needs takes away from the ability to buy new cop cars or make improvements on mill and overlay of roads or at the swimming pool. When you look at our budget and you look at our year-end expenditures, they're transfers. We're taking the money that the department heads have not spent throughout the course of the year in their operating budget, and we're transferring that money into the capital improvement fund.
Okay.
So when you look at our history of transfers in the last 3 to 4 years, historically speaking, we've been transferring, there were years we couldn't make any transfers.
Does that show any place online? Does it be read?
You can look at any one of the, most of the last 3 years, all of our transfers have been in December. A majority of our transfers have been in December, and you can see,
Fourth quarter.
yes, and they're being
But-
transferred into a place that we can use that money for capital projects. It's not being spent frivolously, it's being saved so that it can be spent on things that we need for capital type expenses
It's
down the road.
not being spent, it's being transferred to the capital improvement project fund.
That's a
Because
su-
that fund is not, it's an unbudgeted fund. If you'll look.
Yeah,
is it in
I
your
understand the
name?
capital improvements, all that. That's why you raised the mill levy from 15
no,
to
no, no, no.
16 by over a mill.
If you'll look at the last page,
Uh-huh.
not in the back, but this one,
Right.
it will give you the capital improvement plan for 2025 through 2029. And you'll see what the city's needs are each year for the next 5 years. That is an unbudgeted fund, meaning we don't have the cash to
Right.
pay for that $1 million in 2025 unless we transfer it from the general fund. We're not spending that money. We're moving it, it's accounting, we're moving it into the capital improvement fund to take care of those. If we don't have that transfer,
Or if the
they don't
department,
get done.
or if the department overspends, you have to transfer the other way.
Nope, that doesn't happen.
I'm just,
It does not happen.
so if you have an extremely snowy winter, you're going to need more money.
You know, that's what a reserve is for. And I told you before, at 6:15 when you were here,
Yeah.
that the reserves were spent to zero
I understand, and that's why it went up
in
from 15 to
in
16.
2008. And it's taken us, how many years, Nathan, to get the reserves to where we are now? And we don't have exorbitant reserves, because I personally do not feel, as a financial person, that the city should be accumulating reserves at the expense of our residents. So we don't have exorbitant reserves like I would venture to say most cities do. But if we have a lot of snowstorms, we have a lot of wind damage, that's what those reserves are for, because we don't budget for,
Right, but yet that goes from the capital improvements funds back to.
no.
Well, it goes for.
It's a separate
If
fund.
you're transferring overtures from departments into capital improvements, is that correct?
Some, if there are some,
Okay,
yes.
so if that department needs money for stuff, doesn't it go the other way?
No,
No.
so what we,
Then how does that department recoup the extra money they spent over what was budgeted?
so what we typically do, and I'll give you an example of this year with the major storms that we had
Yeah.
come through in July. The Public Works Department will expend their budget line item down to zero if it all gets spent. And then within the administration department, and again, it's all on the monthly financials, we have a contingency line item, and that contingency line item is about $170,000. So if we have to overspend on clearing debris from storms, and the Public Works Department has exhausted that line item, then we will pull from the contingency fund.
And that contingency is part of the reserves.
It
It's
gets
immediately
calculated as a
available.
part of our reserves, yeah.
So under expenditure goes into reserves or goes to capital improvement?
It'll go to capital. And then the city, historically, when we've had to, the city council's policy is to have a general fund reserve of about 20% of the budget year, not including transfers to other funds. So occasionally, we will budget an increase in reserves or a transfer into reserves to maintain that 20% reserve
Where does
rate
it come from?
from the general fund.
Okay.
So we'll budget it just like we budget the transfer into the capital improvement
Yeah,
fund.
the other question I had is, and it was in your newsletter, and I didn't understand the theory behind it. If you receive more sales tax than you budget for, where does the overage go?
It just shows up on the actual financial report. So that's part, again, that can be part of that transfer at the end of the year into the CIP.
But you can't spend it.
We cannot spend more than what we've budgeted to in a current year. So it gets rolled into the capital improvement fund. And then because that's what they call an unbudgeted fund, we don't tell the state what we're going to spend in that account. We
Right.
report to the state what we spent the previous year. So we could add another street to the mill and overlay cycle, or if there was an emergency repair somewhere that needed to be done. I know in the past, when we've had to do an emergency repair on a storm box, we've pulled money from the reserve, or from the contingency fund. Or if the department budget is looking strong, they're in their budget, they've not had any surprises, if they can absorb it in the maintenance line item of Public Works, then they'll do
So you
that.
got lucky when the tornado came through that it was a few hundred yards south
Yes,
of the
we
pool.
did. Yes, we did.
Yes.
It was in Fairway,
I know.
just barely. Okay.
Now, and I'll tell you, on the capital improvement that I was just referring to, over the next 5 years, we need $7 million. Now, we, because of the transfers we've been able to make for money that was not spent over the last few years, we are able to fund 3 years?
Through 2026.
Yeah, through 2024, 25, and 26, we have funded.
Okay.
But if we can't continue the, managing the budget the way we do, we've got 27, 8, and 9, which is about $4 million that we're gonna need to transfer from dollars that were unspent. Now, it was, let's see. It wasn't until the last 2 years that that's been the case. Prior to that, it kept me awake at night worrying how we are going to fund our capital improvements, which is the mill and overlay, which is the stormwater infrastructure. All of that, I was wondering, where are we going to get this money?
So basically, the city can't live within the revenue neutral.
I think what you've
Is
seen.
that what you're saying?
I think what you've seen throughout the county is, I believe there was only one city, and I don't recall the name of it off the top of my head, but there's only been one city who said that they were going to stick with the revenue neutral rate. I mean, this was a bill that was designed to create hardship for municipalities. And so.
Do what?
This was a bill that was designed to create hardship
Oh,
for
okay.
municipalities. And it's just like the tax lid that the legislature passed numerous years before that. I mean, really, the cities have said, let us handle our budgets and get out of our way. And if the budgets are out of control, then we're going to have, there'll be a room packed full of people telling us that the budget's out of control.
I mean, it would be nice if the city would somehow do what neighboring cities of Prairie Village and Mission has done, and has set up a fund for giving back portion of the real estate revenue to fixed income people. Just a thought.
Sir, can I?
We
can I-
appreciate
sir,
those thoughts.
Can I address one more
Sure,
thing with you real quick?
I'll argue with you.
I don't want to argue. You mentioned the pet waste stations, and I personally probably will never use pet waste stations. But on the Citizens Satisfactory Survey, that was the number one or number two, I forget, item that received the most comments.
As if anybody's gonna use it.
Tons of
To me,
tons of
that's a
people.
want, not a need.
And that is your opinion, but if I did the math correctly, that's about 1/1000th of what the city budget is that we're using on the pet
But
waste
that's
station.
1/1000 that could have been
Well,
put to
but-
better use.
Let me make an addition
ahead.
to
Go
that
ahead.
comment. What we did to pay for that additional cost is we increased the fee that dog owners
I mean, as long
have to pay to get their license. So the people that wanted it are directly paying for it. If you don't have a dog, it's not affecting you.
So basically, you're doing what the U.S. Congress tries to make everybody think they're doing, is if they increase something here or spend something here, that it has to be paid for.
Well, I'm
just
not
saying.
going there.
Huh?
I'm not going to
No, I'm
comment
just
on what the
saying. I
state
have
or
a question for the
the
chief.
government does. Now, just, okay, one comment on your 462,000 revenue number. That revenue is not just property tax. That's all of the general fund revenue. So that's not, I think it's a coincidence that those numbers were not close.
Is the police department still daily going around every street, neighborhood?
I can't say that a police car goes daily down every street, but I would feel very confident that our streets are very well patrolled.
Well, I'm not saying, the only reason I'm asking is I used to see almost every day the police department go by. And
Okay.
I haven't seen that in the last month or over a month. And I didn't know whether or not that changed, that policy changed.
I don't, yes, it has.
Okay.
If you're talking about a written policy that says officers must patrol every street and
I
fairway
hear that's what you were
with,
doing.
okay.
I mean, that's just a comparison based on my experience of seeing them, just like I see every day a maintenance truck goes by.
Sure.
Which is absolutely useless and a big waste of money.
John, I just wanted to say thank you for coming. We appreciate
Yeah.
you being here, and also the perspective of, we live in a very affluent community, but there are people who are on fixed incomes is not one that we're always thinking about every day. So, you know, even that is really valuable for us, and we will continue to be mindful of what we're spending.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, Prairie Village is a pretty upscale neighborhood with, I doubt there's much difference in the percentages of fixed income in Prairie Village that there is in Fairway.
I think they're very different cities.
Back to
Bef- be-
hula
be-
hands.
Okay, before
Ju-
you, since you've spoken once, Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to have their first opportunity to speak? Please come forward. State your name and address for the record, please.
This is on already?
Yep.
I'm Brian Robinson. I'm at 5301 Norwood Street. I respect your budget process, and I appreciate the time that you guys all put into it, and wanted to thank you for adding to the capital improvement plan the tunnel restoration. Appreciate you considering that. It means a lot to the neighborhood, and it's important to the safety of children, older people, elderly people, and everyday people, and so greatly appreciate it. There's a lot of traffic on that street, so wanted to thank you for it. It also adds to the beauty and the value of the homes in the neighborhood, so appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate those comments, and you're welcome. Anyone else? First-time comments? Okay. You're up.
Anyways, so back to Houlihan's?
Yes.
So are you all getting any money from that place at all?
No.
Nothing?
Well, we would be getting property taxes.
You are getting property taxes? Less than what it was before, when it was open?
I've not looked to see what, or if there's been a decline in property taxes, but because it's a leased building, the likelihood would be that the property taxes would not decrease that much just because it's been vacant.
Okay. So could anything go in that building, or is that all up to you guys to
Well,
determine?
you know what? I would love to tell you about Houlihan's. I don't get this opportunity very often.
You just want to have a drink after this?
Huh?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That building has been vacant since December 31
Yeah.
of 2019. The way this, Nathan, what? The way the city found out was one of the officers was taking a walking patrol of the Fairway Shops, walked by there and saw a notice on the door. That's how the city learned of that property being vacated.
And that's how the employees learn too.
Pardon?
That's how the employees
Oh, I
learn
know.
too.
Exactly. Now, that building is privately owned by a group of investors, is
Two
not
old guys,
part
I
of,
think.
of the Fairway Shops. What happened is when the group that owned the Houlihan's throughout the city went into bankruptcy, they wanted to get that location out of the courts because it was privately owned. So, so that happened. The court allowed that to happen. Nathan and I have met numerous times with Block and Associates, David Block, and we have talked about what we would like, what kind of restaurant we would like to have. We'd like to have a family restaurant like the ones that we had, a neighborhood restaurant. And we met numerous times with him. He didn't bring us anyone. We kept asking him. He said, well, we had a couple, but their finances fell through. I said, well, keep working. We need to fill that. So he did bring us a viable one that would have been a very good fit. And I said, okay, let's see their numbers, their budget, their construction numbers. Let's see what they want to do. The city can ask that. And we had previously talked to David Block about what the city would do as far as incentives. That is not something that Fairway automatically does. Now, we did some incentive for Pizza 51, we did some incentives for Stroud's, and those were the same concepts that we passed along to David that we would consider, that the council would consider for that restaurant. So he brought in a very viable restaurant, one we would have been proud and excited to have. And they presented the budget to us. And I looked at that budget, and it was $1 million. And I said, okay, what's your ask? In other words, what incentives do you want? The response was $1 million. And I said, you're asking the city to fund 100% of the cost of that restaurant? And I said, no.
You mean for the repairs of the place?
And for the napkins and the plates and everything that was in their budget. I said, go back and rework those. Nathan, you were there. So what happened? I said, go back and rework those numbers. The city is not going to fund 100%. So they came back a couple weeks later, 1.2 million. I said, okay.
Sound like you guys.
What's your ask? 1.2 million. And I looked at David Block and I said, what is going on here? He and I had a few words, and he's gone dark since that time.
Okay. So do you all have control over what would go into that building?
Would be subject, the building is in a B2 neighborhood business district, so the city code outlines the types of acceptable businesses or uses that could be used in that space in that district.
Okay.
So anything that would go into there, the city of Fairway regulates commercial very strictly, so anything that would go in there would have to go, any signage or anything like that would have to be approved by Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council. So if there is a proposed change in use or a request to change the zoning, that's a whole other process that would have to go through. So if it's something that's already allowed within the B1 or B2 district, it's a pretty straightforward process. But if it's something that's not allowed, then they have to seek variances or exceptions from the Planning Commission and the City Council.
Okay. Thank you. And your comment, you sent me some information, Nathan sent me some information about the senior development in
Yes.
the office park.
Yes?
So is there any sort of idea what sort of occupancy rate you're anticipating this place to have, since you seem to mention it was such a great deal?
They're already leasing out units for fall of 2025. So I expect that by the time we get there, it'll be 100% leased.
Really? And so it's got to stay that way, or what happens if things go bad?
So I don't have the development agreement in front of us, but we do have, in terms of restrictions that the city has imposed, there are several, but one of them is that at least 80% of the units have to have at least one person aged 55 or older residing in the unit. And so the property management or the facility management folks have to do an annual census every year and report back to us what the ages are to verify that there's at least one person above 55. And if they drop below 80%, there's a corresponding drop in the incentive that they're eligible for.
Oh, okay.
So that's all spelled out in the development agreement.
Okay.
While we're on that subject, that was, according to our attorneys, one of the, if not the best negotiated,
That's what he said, yeah.
to you, did you just say
I
that?
told him that, yeah, in my email to him.
In a private conversation. All right, I'm going to share it with the
In-
audience.
In an email, so.
Huh?
Oh, I could have brought the email if you wanted to read it.
No,
I mean, if you
no,
want
that's
to gloat
okay.
about it, but anyways.
What we are, okay, they asked for incentives. We asked for incentives back. And the city is coming out, how do I want to say this, better than the individual building it
Well,
and
that's
the
good
incentives that he asked. So, I mean, so we had great attorneys helping us with that. Nathan did a great job. I'm very, very, very proud of what the city negotiated. They're going to help us pay for an additional officer that we're going to need for that. They're going to help pay for that salary and the benefits. That's just one. There's several others. They're paying administrative fees for Nathan and his staff to monitor that, and there's several others. Donations to the Shawnee Indian Mission. it's quite a list.
Sounds good. I'll leave on a high note, too. I know the Public Works guy isn't here, is he?
No, he's on
Okay.
vacation.
So just to compliment the Public Works, instead of them just all driving around, like we see sometimes, not doing anything, they have trimmed some trees that keep the visibility clearer. Just a few branches, not a big thing, but you know, that's
You know,
been
when they're
nice.
driving around in their trucks,
They're what?
when they are driving around in their trucks, they are looking at right-of-way trees and the condition of the trees. Right-of-way violations, they are doing their job. They're not just driving around to drive around. They are.
And Mayor, I can attest to that, because when our storm sewers occasionally clog up after our big rains, I call in and say, the storm sewer at the northwest corner of East Vale and Lockton is clogged up, and general response is, yeah, we're already on it because we saw it on the drive-by. So they're not just driving around for fun.
Nope, and they do it usually each morning to see what's happened overnight. I mean, they're another set of eyes at the staff. That's one of the things that makes Fairway the great livable city that we are. Nathan, any other comments?
We do have one person watching online, so if that person would like to make any public comments for our budget right now, please use the raise hand feature.
No? Okay. All right. Council, before we vote, is there any additional discussion or questions? Kellyanne?
Kellyanne Busick, Ward 1. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. It's really important for the citizens to really view what we do, and not totally behind the scenes, but just to be here so you know what we go through, and we're doing this all for the citizens and our neighbors. But also, I think we need to also make known that this is a difficult process, and I'm totally aware of that, and I do appreciate everyone's work on this process. However, I do ask the question when council says, well, what services do you want to get rid of? That's not the question we should be asking. The question we should be asking is, where are we going to stop? How much is too much in tax revenue that we need? How much? Because there are people in the city of Fairway, like the gentleman who was here, who are on fixed incomes, and they can't make up the difference when their taxes increase. And I know this is county and state and so forth, but we also have to be aware of their needs, because they've lived here for years, decades, and what have you, and they're not going to be able to afford their property taxes. And that's a real concern to me as a city council member, and that I need to do my job and to be very aware of them. But like I said, and I will say this to the mayor, she asked me if I want to work on the budget with her next year, and I agreed, and I will. But I also want to say that I think it's a big learning experience for everybody involved. And as every year goes by, things change. We have things that happen in the city, like storms, snow, what have you. But we also have to make aware that we're being efficient with our funds. And I agree we are, but I also agree we need to do something, and I'm very aware of that, and I'm going to be working with Melanie, with Nathan, if they'll have me, because...
Of course we'll have you.
I know, because if you haven't realized, I'm going to be voting no tonight. And on the revenue neutral rate and and our new budget. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, is there a motion concerning the resolution?
Give me a second, I pull it up. Mayor, I move that we approve items A through C on the new budget agenda. Actually, it'd be items B and C on the new budget, new business agenda, which is Resolution 2024D, which is a resolution to exceed the revenue neutral rate and to approve our 2025 budget, including the 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan.
And Mayor, I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2024D as well as the 2025 budget and the 2025 through 2029 capital improvement plan. All those in favor?
Mayor, this needs to be a roll call vote.
Oh, thank you. You told me that, I forgot. State statute requires that it be a roll call vote. I'm going to start with Joe so I don't forget him. Sorry, Joe.
Aye.
Okay, Jenna?
Yes.
David, yes? Jerry?
Jerry, yes.
Kellyanne? No. Lee?
Aye.
Dan?
Yes.
Tanya? Yes. All right, it is 7 yes, 1 no. Passes. Okay, next on the agenda is the governing body comment. During this time, members of the governing body will be given the opportunity to speak about matters related to the city. No formal action will be taken during this time. Anyone have anything?
I have one.
Jenna?
Mayor, Jenna, reminder, the 14th is the Go Green Fair of the Northeast Johnson County communities. Are
Closer to
getting
the
together.
microphone, Jenna.
Yep, can you hear me? Yeah.
No, I can.
The 14th is the Go Green Environmental Fair. The municipalities of Northeast Johnson County are co-sponsoring it. It's 9 to 12 at the Community Center in Mission. It's really great. We got to touch worms last time. There's a lot to learn. So I encourage everyone, it's free to come to that. And thank you, Fairway, for co-sponsoring that.
Anyone else? Lee?
So I just want to announce that Kellyanne and I are having our first Ward 1 resident meeting. It's going to be on the 24th of November. It's here at City Hall. It's what I say? September 24th. Teamwork. Here at City Hall at 6:30. And I want to thank Nathan and Abby with an assist from Jenna for putting together the constant contact that'll be going out to all the Ward 1 residents, I think 10 days before and 2 days before, and we'll also be getting the word out. So look forward to that and hope we have a good group at our first meeting. And different topic, I think Dan brought this up, but I just wanted to say, relative to this meeting that's been called for Johnson County wastewater for whatever they're going to be doing to the pump station, I think we did a good thing in working with Bill and everyone to say we have third-party vendors that are coming in that are going to be doing substantive work in the neighborhood, that City Council has at least given a heads up. This is another example, even though this is not a Bill project, of something that would have been nice to get a heads up. The residents up and down State Park Road got a flyer in the mail. This is a copy of it, but the rest of us didn't, and so we got a lot of questions about, what's going on, what are they going to do, this, that, and the other. We wouldn't have answers, but we would at least be given a heads up ahead of time that the meeting is going to be held. So just a thought.
I'm going to be attending that. I'll be
Yes.
there.
Yep.
Thank you.
Nathan, would you like to say anything about that project for people here that maybe don't know what it is?
Sure. The pump station at the bottom of Belinder at State Park Road in Belinder is going to undergo a major renovation project that'll start end of next year, and it's anticipated to be up to a 2-year project. They're going to make additions to the building, but if you walk the area and you're familiar, there is a brick wall in front of the building. All of the additions will take place within that space between the existing building and the wall. They can't go much further than that because of the underground retention that they have in the corner. So they have reached out to our community development director, Basil Alani, and they will be submitting plans. They call him on a regular basis to make sure that they're complying with our code, even though technically as a county government they would not be responsible to our code. But as a gesture of their goodwill, they are bringing the project to the Planning Commission in October. So there would likely be some notification with that as well, just because of the size of the project. But they're still in the design phase. They hope to finish design sometime this year. But they're far enough along that they can get to Planning Commission next month.
Thank you. Anything else from council?
Just continuing on that real quick, I mean, that is my profession, water and wastewater. So specifically for you two, if you have residents that get into it and have questions, I'm happy to talk to them. You probably don't know it unless you live here versus, KC Mo, but we are so lucky. I mean, we pay for it, but we're lucky that they're proactive about things like that instead of reactive. Because that project, what it all boils down to is to prevent sewage from being in the creek and above ground.
And I believe they said in one of our initial meetings that this is the oldest existing wastewater infrastructure that the county has. Yeah.
And I'll give them credit. We provided feedback about the mowing and the bushes on that property, the green space. They were very proactive about jumping right on it and giving us a number we can call if we ever see anything. So no arguments from here about how they're managing their end of it. It'd be nice to get a heads up when they're when they're going to have a big meeting of something like that. So
For those of you that are going, I heard you were, you are. I'm not able to attend. I have a prior commitment that was set months ago for the Council of Mayors.
we'll take good notes.
So will you take good notes for me? And I'd appreciate hearing how you think it went and if you have any concerns.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, public comment for any items not listed on the agenda. I think we kind of did that already, but in case someone has thought of something else? Nope, anyone in the audience? Online? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you all coming tonight.